Welcome to the show. Welcome to Thursday. Glad to have you along with us today as we roll into this day and get a little bit closer to another Notre Dame football game day coming up this Saturday night when the Fighting Irish host Navy Midshipmen. I'm Sean Stiers, along with double duty Jesse Stiers today. He is doing this show with us for the next couple of hours. And then on the CFB Nation YouTube channel, it's Jesse Stiers and Trevor Trowbridge with a little spread option. Do you know what you guys are talking about tonight on the spread option show?
It is like mainly all sports betting. So
mainly all sports betting.
Yeah.
It's like 60% of the time it works every time.
That Trevor shared the document with me, and basically there's like a handful of games, and by handful I mean like 6 or 7. And we go through these and we talk about the spread, the money line, the over-under, and then some props we do and don't like. So,
all right,
right up my alley. I'm actually excited. Well, I'm excited, but also Vince knew who to ask in his absence. He knew that I would be a sucker for this.
Or he just said, "What are the other options on this?"
Also
but Vince
true.
is out. Vince is out through the end of the week, and so Jesse is filling in for Vince.
I think he's in Dallas, right?
He is. He is in Dallas for some kind of educational convention kind of thing going on. Congratulations, Josh. He says in the YouTube chat that his daughter got accepted to St. Mary's. Congrats on that. So Josh will have a daughter, St. Mary's bound, it sounds like, next year. We've got Notre Dame and Navy kicking off 7:30 this Saturday night here on Sports Radio, WSBT, the Notre Dame Radio Network, with Tony Simeone and Ryan Harris. The game day show here on WSBT from 3 until 6:30 Eastern Time. Tim Grau, Eric Hansen, Tyler Horka, they'll be at the linebacker from 3 to 6:30. This week's special guests include a couple of Notre Dame greats, wide receiver Michael Floyd, linebacker Daryl Flash Gordon, and they will also have Mitch Jeter on the phone, former Notre Dame kicker from a year ago, and he is going to talk with them about some of the kicking issues that have plagued Notre Dame this year. And we're going to talk about kicking here in just a minute as well. So stay tuned, or not stay tuned, tune in, the Game Day Show, 3 to 6:30 Eastern Time, live from the linebacker. Drop by and see them and all that kind of good stuff. That is this Saturday leading up to Notre Dame and Navy, 7:30. And, as far as primetime kickoffs go, this could be the fastest primetime game ever. So that's not totally a bad thing. How you feeling about that noon kickoff next week in Pittsburgh?
At first I was actually upset about it, but I'm happy about it because we no longer have to get a hotel. We're just going to get up early, go to the game, and then be able to drive back afterwards. So we eliminated the need for a hotel. So you always got to find a way to spin it in a positive direction. Would I have liked, a later kickoff? Sure, but that just means we probably would have had to stay in a hotel because Pittsburgh is only, just over 2 hours away. So we'll get up, probably leave here around 7-ish, get to campus, 9:30, tailgate for a little bit, go to the game. Game will probably go to about 4 o'clock, and then, traffic and drive home. We'll be home between 7 and 8. So I feel good about it. I don't like noon kicks personally because I think that's I don't play. So like this doesn't mean anything coming from me, but I always feel like the team is a little bit flatter during the noon kickoffs. But, they stomped Arkansas earlier this year during that noon kickoff.
Did all right against Arkansas. There was no flatness there. They, much less flat than they were against Boston College against Arkansas. And BC obviously kicked off at 3:30. So, all right, well, that's next week's game. They've got Navy this week. And Probably the top news today that we got here at the end of the week. Notre Dame released its latest injury report. Donovan Heinisch, defensive tackle, out. He has a concussion. How impactful do you think that is against the midshipmen, Jess?
I'm not going to make it seem like it's the end of the world, but to me, it's a pretty significant impact when you're playing a triple option team and you're already down Gabriel Rubio. Like, for a triple option defense, you want to have as many of your box players as possible, so your D line and linebackers typically. And not, again, not that they're thin along the defensive line, but they have some of these injuries kind of piling up. Rubio and Heinisch are some of your more experienced guys against the triple option. So, again, I'm not going to say it's the end of the world, but it's definitely not insignificant. Like, you want experienced bodies when you're playing against the triple option.
Yeah.
And they're losing another experienced guy who's gone against the triple option at least twice, I believe.
Exactly. And you couple that with the fact that you don't have Gabe Rubio. That's the bigger issue, is that it's an interior defensive lineman. You were already down Rubio, so now you're down a little bit more. But other guys will have some opportunities to get in there. They don't have to worry as much, in terms of pass rush, even though, and again, we'll get into it. Navy has a little bit more passing game. They had that last year as well. But my point is, it's not like a typical offense where you need as much, from the defensive line. It's going to be very physical. It's just much more physical as opposed to penetration and, in the backfield and some of those kind of things, I guess. So Jaden Greathouse remains out with he is he's listed as questionable. I shouldn't say he remains out with that thigh injury. Cooper Flanagan with his Achilles. We saw just a little bit of Cooper Flanagan, made his return against USC, and then we didn't see him last week against Boston College after having that Achilles surgery last year. He is questionable. Micah Gilbert and Christian Gray both questionable as well. Gilbert with the hand injury, Gray with the hip injury that kept him out of last week's game. So that's kind of where things are right now in terms of the injuries that we got today. Now, we know Notre Dame had some major issues with the kicking game last week against Boston College, and Marcus Freeman said on Monday that they would, that Noah Burnett was at the top of the depth chart entering the week. And so Marcus Freeman held his Thursday Zoom call with the media earlier today. So we got some new information from Mr. Freeman. And the first question that he got was about who's going to handle the place kicking duties, who's going to handle the kickoff duties, and all that. And here is what Marcus Freeman said.
Go with Eric Schmidt, and a lot of things went into those decisions. How we feel about the health of Noah, and what's best for the team, and I think at the end of the day, that's what the ultimate decision maker. What is best for the team? What do we feel like is going to be best for the team to have the confidence to make the field goals, and we ask our field goal kicker to make our field goal unit to make it, and that's probably the best answer I can give you for that.
All right, so that's the answer we've got. It's going to be Eric Schmidt, the freshman, who was the top-rated kicker in the nation in his recruiting class, and he missed a field goal last week, but he was also the only one of the three kickers to actually make a kick. He ended up converting Notre Dame's only extra point in the game last week after Burnett missed, and Burnett, of course, had the miss a couple of weeks ago against USC as well. Marcello Diomede also missed, and Schmidt, who probably has the biggest of the legs, they end up going with him. He'll handle all the kicking duties Saturday. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think obviously there needs to be some sort of solution. I thought he looked the best last week against Boston College. And that's not hard to do. I just thought
saying a lot. Yeah.
Body language wise, confidence wise, I thought he looked like he had the most moxie. So, giving him the starting job, kind of wiping the slate clean and just saying, okay, let's just forget about everything in the past. Let's kind of move forward here. So I think he's he's the answer. And I think he's got the most talent. Obviously, some of the other guys aren't getting it done, and so you might as well just cut bait and, go with the young guy and continue to develop him.
Yeah, and I think that where Burnett is, you are probably better off just shutting Noah Burnett with that injured hip. To what extent he is still injured right now, who knows? But it feels like it has impacted both his mechanics as well as his confidence. And so I think that you're probably better off just going in another direction, which they did with Eric Schmidt. And, so that's what they end up doing. He's got, it sounds like, the healthiest leg and the biggest leg. The accuracy is the thing. But I also think that just going with him, just deciding it's going to be Schmidt. This is who we're going with. We're not going to be alternating and, rotating and all these different things with the different duties. I think that potentially just puts him in the right frame of mind in terms of confidence so that he's not looking over his shoulder, and I'll be really curious to see if he's able to go in there and just bang one through the first opportunity that he's got. He did become the first Notre Dame freshman kicker in 10 years to kick an extra point when he did it earlier this year against Purdue. And remember, he banged 8 extra points against Purdue in that game. So he was just fine then. And so that's the direction they're rolling with. And again, just shut Noah Burnett down for a little bit, see if he can get healthy. And if you need to reevaluate at the end of the month as you get into the postseason, then you can do that. But I think that right now, just the way to go is just to ride with Eric Schmidt as long as you can. So another, not technically kicker, but the punter came up. James Rendell came up today. And Rendell, of course, the Australian who came here last year, got his second year to kick with Notre Dame this year. He is a little bit older. He's 25 years old now. And there's been talk about petitioning to get him a third year of eligibility here at Notre Dame for next season. Marcus Freeman was asked about that, as well as just kind of the performance that James Rendell has had this year. And here's what Freeman said.
I'm not sure about the extra year yet. Still waiting to hear back, I think, on that one. As far as what he's done, it's the work, the intentional work, the mental and physical work he's put in. He's doing a lot of little things that it takes to be more consistent. He's always had a strong leg, but just understanding, the different type of punts we need, what punts suit him the best in certain situations. I think that has helped all of us in terms of how we want to call each punt play, how we're trying to cover that for that unit. But James has been doing a really, really good job. He's been a good weapon for our team, and he's elevated tremendously because of the work he's put in and the confidence he has, and the consistency he's punting with.
Notre Dame is currently 6th in the nation in net punting average, doing pretty well in that department, averaging 43.7 yards per punt, just one touchback that Rendell has had. And, you heard Freeman kind of talk about it. It feels like they just like all the rugby style punting and, all that stuff that they were doing last year. It just like they got away from that and just let him use that big leg of his, Jess. And the hang time has been good. The coverage has been good. His accuracy has been good. He just feels like a different punter this year compared to the guy we saw last year. Don't you think?
Yeah, it feels like they're not forcing a circle peg into a square hole at the end of the day. And that's what they were doing last season. I think they wanted him to try to, fit into this very specific mold of being this kind of Aussie style punter. And then this year, it's like, all right, we're going to let you loose. And I feel like a very underrated part of what Notre Dame has done this year is flip field position, get really good, pinning their opponents deep into the territory. And that's a huge factor. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but I think some people made fun of me last year when I picked Rendell to be, kind of a difference maker guy. But this is kind of who I thought he was going to be last year because about the big leg, the potential for hang time, and now he's kind of got it all figured out and he's thriving. And it'll become even more important as Notre Dame ramps up for hopefully a playoff run, right? Because going against some of those better opponents, you're going to want to pin them deep and make them go the entire length of the field.
Exactly, and that obviously does nothing but help your defense out. And the defense is getting a little bit better every week. When you have consistent punting like that, it helps out quite a bit as well. Couple more thoughts from Marcus Freeman on another topic before we get into some specific Navy stuff here in just a minute. But Notre Dame, we're in November now. 4 games in the month of November this year, and the Irish have been really good under Freeman in the month of November, going 9-2, and the 2 losses are to Clemson and to USC. And of course, Clemson was year one, or USC was year 1 for Freeman out there in the Coliseum, and Clemson was year 2. And here's what Marcus Freeman had to say about kind of this home stretch and the month of November in terms of message to team and those kind of things.
Yeah, all those things, right? All those things. The people that put in effort to make sure that we are intentionally doing things that are going to help maximize the players throughout the entirety of the season is important. And credit to a lot of people that put work in and thought into how we structure what we ask them to do and how we do things. They understand the importance of November. I remember when I was in college, Coach Tressel used to always talk about, contenders show up in November and the importance of November. But I try not to group November as a month, right? It's everything has a process, right? And this can be being good in November. This can be a game, but everything has a process. But in order to accomplish that process, you gotta just stay focused on the present and then struggle in the present. And so, being good in November is a reflection of being good each week, right? Each opportunity, and each opportunity is a reflection of being good each day. And so, I think for me, it's the ability to continue to remind them, this is about this opportunity, not the big picture in November. We know that, but this opportunity that we have right in front of us. And if we focus on that, and then we focus on understanding that today is the most important thing we have, the way we practice, the way we meet, then all of a sudden you'll look back and say, hey, we had a good November, but it was in the moment, you just focus on what you have right in front of you.
Anything stand out there to you, Jess?
I think what stood out to me was just the overall lack of an answer. That was just kind of nauseating, to be honest with you.
Man, coming in hard.
No, but seriously, it was just okay, we get it. It was so much coach jumbo in one answer. I was you completely lost me here almost. To me, what I would boil this down to, and Marcus Freeman would never say this, but they've taken their lumps early on in the season in the Marcus Freeman tenure. And so I think as they go, approach November, they more or less feel their backs up against the wall and realize kind of, it's do or die by the time it comes to November. If Notre Dame, last season, they had to win all those games in order to make it to the college football playoff. The year that they lost to Clemson, had they not lost that Clemson game, they probably, would have had a shot at postseason play. So, I think what Marcus Freeman is ultimately saying is, it's not their performance in November is a reflection of everything. It's not just a singular moment inside November. And I think without saying it, he wanted to say, they feel the pressure in November because of some of the mistakes that they've made early on in the season. And that leads to better play. That's how I would boil down what he was saying in his answer.
Okay. Good enough. I'll move on off of that.
What you did? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I think that part of how you're good in November is if you keep getting better as the season goes on. I think that there's some of that he was kind of including in there, and he was talking about the sports science and those different kind of things as well. Piggybacking on that a little bit, last year Notre Dame and Ohio State became the first 2 teams ever to play a 16 game college football season. So Freeman talked about after going through those 16 games, the question was, have you tweaked anything in practice this year, whether it's practice structure, load management for players, any of that kind of stuff?
Small adjustments. I think any leader has to be flexible. You got to, deal with the current situation of your team and while also looking big picture, right? Like I continue to tell people to stay in the moment, but I have to be a guy that looks big picture, all right? Because that will determine what we do in the moment. And so you have to be adaptable. You have to, and this can be individualized, right? There's individuals that need to be adapted, but the individuals that need to adjustments, that affects your team because somebody has to take those reps, right? Somebody has to take those reps because you can't cheat the team for one individual, but you can adjust it for him. And so those are things that every day there's feedback, there's dialogue between me and our sports performance staff. And, based on what happened yesterday, how do we want to adjust today? We always are proactive with the structure of the week. And again, the structure of the week is based on the big picture and the opponent, but you have to be adaptable in the moment. And so I think it's not a black and white thing where I can say this was one change we made. This is what we learned from last year. No, it's just the structure, right? The big picture from August, really, you could think even to post last January to how we've structured out practice to through week 12 was with the knowledge that we utilized from last year. But then in the moment, you have to make the adjustments based on what your numbers and your team and the science is telling you.
This is another long answer, Jesse, but I boil that down to I'm the head coach. Yes, I and our performance staff sat and looked at different things from last year, and we have made some tweaks, but we never said to the team, we're tweaking this because of the fact that we played 16 games last year. We might play 16 this year. So there have been some subtle tweaks without getting very specific about it. Did you pick up anything else other than that?
Yeah, the way I kind of interpreted that was, I think each season it's going to be different depending on obviously how many games you play. Last year they played 16. So yeah, they kind of sat down and came up with a template or a game plan of how they thought this season would go. But I think the most important thing he said there was, it's always at the end of the day adjustable, right? Because like you can have this plan, but then you have to be responsive to what is going on throughout the season, right? So like if as they incur certain injuries, you're going to peel back in certain areas, like along the defensive line where they're starting to get, a little thin with Rubio and Heinisch out. Like I'm sure they're tweaking
offensive line as well. Yeah.
Right. And offensive line as well. I'm sure they're tweaking, how the offensive line and defensive line are going about their drills, practice, how much full contact they're doing, more mental side of things, walkthrough side of things. Like, and I think that's the important aspect that not a lot of people realize is like at the beginning of the season, tackling and thudding is more important because you're getting back into the game speed. You know what I mean? Your body took some time off from actually physically tackling someone. But as the season goes, you peel off on that stuff because tackling is tackling, like you either kind of have it or don't. And if you don't have it, someone else is going to replace you. And so the more you get into the season, it becomes less physical and more mental, but you can still accomplish a lot through mental reps and not necessarily, physical all out reps every single, practice, drill, etc.
We know Navy's going to be a physical game because it always is. When you face that triple option, there's a lot of pounding and hitting and smacking and thudding on every play. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, we will get a bit deeper into Navy. We'll talk about taking on that option offense, and of course, the passing game that they've had with them for the last couple of years. There might even be a little whiteboard involved. That's coming up next. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers, Notre Dame Navy. 7:30 this Saturday night at Notre Dame Stadium. Marcus Freeman talked earlier this week about how much it means for a defensive player to have experience playing against Navy's option offense. And here's what Freeman said about the value of experience going up against the option.
So valuable. You always can tell. I was looking at last year's post-game notes, and maybe it was like KVA, Kingston, and Alsbury. I think it was their first time playing Navy, and it was like, hey, they seem like first-year triple option players, right? And the experience of understanding how fast it's going to happen is so important. So there's so much value in being a person that has played against Navy or Army in previous experiences.
All right, Jesse. So you are our resident triple option expert. And if I can get this stupid screen to work. So you played middle linebacker, of course, in a high school here in South Bend, and you faced the Mishawaka option offense every year, a couple times, twice a year, I believe. So like 5 or 6 times in the course of your career. How did you feel playing against the option the first time you faced it? And when did you become comfortable playing against it?
Yeah, so my first time would be my sophomore year, was starting linebacker, inside linebacker. I was excited because I knew as an inside linebacker that meant that, playing the option is kind of built for you. You're going to rack up your tackles. You're in on just about every play. But I will say the first game is hard because you just don't understand, like Marcus Freeman was talking about, just kind of like the tempo and how quickly, how downhill everything is. The linemen are coming down on you quick. The fullback dive is coming down on you quick. And so, a lot of time it's not really think, it's just react, right? But you kind of have to still understand your assignments, obviously. So I didn't get comfortable. I don't know if I ever got fully comfortable with it, to be honest with you. And maybe that was just because, for lack of better terms, I didn't think our defense was super great at defending the triple option. Like we had some.
Let's be honest. Most teams in this area aren't. That's part of how Mishawaka has had so much success over the years. It is you only face it maybe once a year. There are a couple other teams in the area that have some of the concepts, but that's why it's so hard. Just like it's hard for FBS programs to go up against it. Like it's typically a one-off offense, and you don't really ever get comfortable with it almost until the game's over, it seems like.
Yeah, and the thing is obviously it's a very physical game, and so your body does feel pretty defeated afterwards. But again, I loved it, and to be honest with you, I thought that playing the triple option my sophomore year was kind of like my breakout game. Like I had like 20 tackles that game, felt really good about it. Felt like I was kind of establishing myself as an underclassman linebacker. But despite no matter how well I played, we would still lose like 31-3 or something, So it's like, do I really feel that good about it?
There were some close games along the way as well. They weren't all blowouts.
Yeah. And I think also I'm not trying to throw shade here, but I think also what doesn't help is when your defensive coordinator doesn't have a grip on how to defend the triple option. And I think that's where Notre Dame is really advantageous, because I think Marcus Freeman figured it out, and he just continues to pass the blueprint on to Al Golden, to now Chris Ash. Like, I think this week was probably predominantly led by Marcus Freeman and the bye week, because playing the triple option is just a one-off thing. Like, when's the last time Chris Ash had to go against a triple option offense? You can't tell me he knows how to defend a triple option offense, and I know Marcus Freeman does know how to. So, we were talking about how much of an influence
Mitch,
Marcus.
By the way, to answer Mitch's question, since you're going to keep talking, Vince was not the defensive coordinator. Vince was an offensive coach in high school. So, no, that was not a reference to Vince when Jesse said that the defensive coordinator didn't know how to attack the option. And to I am Tenzin, I am the son of Aang, taking difference with the deference with the fact that you talked about your 20 tackles. I will just say he averaged about 15 tackles every time he played Mishawaka. is what it is, because it's the middle linebacker is a big part of that, and attacking the fullback and the dive is a big part of that. So,
I would say the time I felt the most uncomfortable playing the option, I don't know if you remember this, but also my sophomore year, we were playing Marion, Mishawaka Marion, and they were still running shades of the triple option
more
themselves.
options. Yeah.
And they, for whatever reason, they thought that I was better off suited to play defensive in that game. And I hated it. I just felt uncomfortable. Obviously it's a way different responsibility than an inside linebacker. And we'll get into some responsibilities here in a little bit, but at defensive end, you're primarily the quarterback guy.
That was because they were sticking with a middle linebacker who should have been a defensive lineman, and they thought that he was that was the way to go. So that's, and again, I don't want to, make this sound like the Jesse Show or whatever, but he faced Mishawaka's option a lot in high school. That's why we're kind of leaning on him for, kind of how this could go. Would you say, because, it is obviously assignment football. That's the old cliche when you're taking on Navy and that option. Is there one position that you would say is more important than another defensively going up against the option, though?
Yeah, I mean, I think your inside four players are your most important, your defensive tackles and your inside linebackers. If your defensive tackles, especially on the play side, can beat their block and, basically push their linemen into the backfield or, get past the block, now you've completely blown up the play, right? And so I think that's where it starts. I think it starts with clogging up the middle. And then if you clog up the middle and Navy wants to get to the perimeter, Notre Dame has the athletes to catch you on the perimeter.
Exactly.
They have athletes to fill the alley. The only time Notre Dame gets beat in the triple option is when there's a bust and either the quarterback or the fullback is running free through the middle of the field. Like, I mean, completely going to be honest with you. I just think you want to start getting on the perimeter against Notre Dame. That's just not the way to go. They have the speed and athleticism to get you.
I'm pulling this cup here. I thought that I had it ready to go, but I think I pulled up the wrong one. So we'll get into some details defending this option here in a minute. But Navy added the passing element last year that they used to have, and they're still running that offense this year. Where they're doing more stuff out of shotgun than they ever used to, and doing some different things. So here's Marcus Freeman on that passing element and what it brings to their offense.
It isn't one where you can have a whole bucket list of calls defensively because they do so much, and it's a unique offense that you're going to have to make sure your eyes are in the right spot. And so we have to have enough, right? You have to have enough where you can play certain type of coverages, certain type of fronts, have enough to bring some pressure, but you're not going to have your normal call sheet that you would going into a game where you're playing with, quote unquote, a typical offense. And so you got to have enough to keep them off balance and to change the look and the plan of attack for their offense. But you can't paralyze your defense because, again, velocity is what matters, and our guys have to be clear on what they're asked to do.
All right, so we talked a lot about it last year. It definitely looks different with the quarterback in the gun. There's still a lot of option. Is defending the option principle still the main key, even with the added element of a passing threat, Jess?
Yeah, like let's just be honest here. Navy's main point of attack is the triple option. If they get into passing the ball, it's because they're kind of treading water, right? Notre Dame has gone against far better passing attacks, right? And predominantly what you're going to see is if Navy wants to go passing, Notre Dame should just play man on the backside, right? Like that's just like, but the thing that I don't worry about the passing attack. I worry about them running the triple option out of gun. That's where I think it gets really hard for Notre Dame, because when you start running the triple option look out of shotgun, that's where it's hard, because Notre Dame is so geared up where Navy is kind of spacing you out a little bit, right? And then you start running some of these triple option concepts with players more spread out. I think that's where they get in trouble. And you watch the game last year, even though, Navy started to run some passing plays, they were gashing Notre Dame in the gun. Like when they would go gun and run the ball, that's where Notre Dame kind of got into some trouble because it's not your standard triple option at that look. You're running triple option out of a different look.
But that was also after Notre Dame had built a pretty comfortable lead.
Right. And so you are going to be more forgiving. Like if you want to run the ball down, 5 scores, be our guest, because that's only going to run the clock out more. But that's, again, like, I guess that's what I'm getting at is Notre Dame. I'm not worried about Notre Dame defending the pass when they start going shotgun and spread. I'm worried about Notre Dame having to actually to guard the option when they go, shotgun and when there's not really you don't know what's going to happen. Like when they're under center and you got 2 wings and a fullback in a 3-point stance, some sort of triple option play is coming. And if they pass, they're passing to tight ends coming off the line of scrimmage. Like Notre Dame has the athletes to go man-to-man on that. But when you open it up, you go shotgun, and it looks like you're going to pass the ball, then all of a sudden you run, a triple option play. I think that's where it gets hard.
Just to kind of look at the numbers that Blake Horvath, their quarterback, has, he has 1,143 passing yards this year, which is obviously a lot more than what Navy typically has. 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So, not a very good touchdown to interception ratio. Does have 926 rushing yards, 13 touchdown runs, which is what you would expect rather. But it's still just 13 pass attempts per game. So like where they get you is by hitting some big passing plays because you fall asleep a little bit, expecting the run, kind of to what you're talking about. But like when you look at those numbers, and again, for a Navy offense, 1,143 passing yards sounds pretty impressive. Well, last year he passed for 1,300 yards and had 1,200 rushing yards. His completion percentage was a little bit lower, but he was also just 7 of 13 for 88 yards and an interception against Notre Dame. Now, he did run for 141 yards because remember, later in the game, again, he hit a couple of big runs, but Notre Dame had a pretty comfortable lead at that point. But my point is, when you look at his passing numbers last year compared to this year, he's a little bit ahead of the pace that he had passing last year. But again, Notre Dame was able to contain him. A big part of Notre Dame's success last year, Navy wasn't turning the ball over, but they had
exactly.
2 fumbles. They had 2 fumbles, you remember, and an interception. Now, part of that, I think, is Navy felt like they weren't ready for the moment, and I do wonder because of the competition that they play, if the sheer size and speed and athleticism that Notre Dame had kind of sped them up and led to a couple, those 2 fumbles that they had early in the game.
Yeah, so you hit the most critical point, in my opinion. You want to beat a Navy team, get them to turn the ball over, take the ball away, and go up multiple possessions. Like that is the easiest way to beat a triple option team. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not like scared for this game this year, but if I'm a Notre Dame fan, don't expect what happened last year to happen again this year. I think this year is going to be much closer. I think it's going to be a much more physical game.
I think so too.
And I don't think the game is going to open up until maybe like the 3rd, potentially beginning of the 4th quarter. I think Navy's going to have a bad taste on their mouth because of how much they kind of let down last season, right? Like they know they didn't play their best ball. And like you said, it was their biggest moment of the season and a turning point in their season. And so I fully believe that Navy is going to be motivated. I think they're going to be playing with a lot of enthusiasm, energy, effort. And I think this game is going to be a lot closer, especially early on before Notre Dame maybe starts to pull away.
They've got something to play for as well because they're not a front runner for one of those college football playoff spots right now. But if they beat Notre Dame, all of a sudden they've got one of the better wins, maybe the best win of any group of 5 team. They eliminate Notre Dame from the playoff race, and they vault themselves potentially into the front runner spot for the group of 5 bid. Like they might actually vault Memphis in the rankings if that were to happen. So they've got a lot to play for in this game. Let's take our quick final timeout this hour. We'll be back and hit a couple finer points of defending the option when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down the first hour of Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Sean Stiers and Jesse Stiers with you today. Notre Dame Navy, of course, coming up this Saturday night at Notre Dame Stadium. We've been talking a little Navy offense. So let's get into, in these final few minutes here of the first hour, Jesse, let's get into some finer points of defending the Navy option offense. Go. You're muted.
I think the first thing that you have to understand when you're playing the triple option is how Notre Dame is going to approach it, right? And basically, they're going to come out in basically some version of like a 4-2-5. They're going to play 5 down linemen, your 2 inside linebackers, and then your other 2 outside linebackers are kind of like overhang players, and then you have your 2 players in the secondary, usually like your safeties, right? And so the first responsibility is kind of defining who's got who. And so in a traditional triple option offense, you usually have 2 wing guys, right? Outside the side.
Yep.
Usually at the end of the line of scrimmage. Sometimes there's a tight end with them, sometimes it's just a tackle. But you're always going to have a fullback with his hand, in the dirt. And so at the snap of the ball, the first option is obviously, that fullback. Whoa, that fullback dive. I don't know why it went all the way over there. But you have that fullback dive, and that's going to be handled by your inside tackles and your 2 inside linebackers, right? So that's kind of the first job. And then say the quarterback keeps it and starts working outside the tackle box. That's where your your defensive ends kind of come into play. They're going to be responsible for the quarterback on either side. And then if they pitch it, then you have either your outside linebackers or your overhang players or your kind of safety kind of coming down and filling the alley as well. But what I've noticed with Notre Dame is they will go, if those wings are down at the line of scrimmage, then their linebackers are also going to play tight. And what I mean, and they're outside linebackers, like they're going to get closer to the line of scrimmage, right? But let me exit out of this one real quick, go full screen. But the more that the running backs, the wings are disconnected from the line and further in the backfield, they're going to back up and truly look like a 4-2-5. But Notre Dame is always in a base going to have 5 down linemen against the triple option. And then your 2 outside linebackers are the guys who can either come down to the line of scrimmage and help support as the Navy, wings are connected to the line there, the last man on line of scrimmage. But as you can see in this formation, you've got a fullback and a running back and a wing in the backfield. So what that does is it tells Notre Dame's linebackers to kind of play off a little bit because they're not so worried about the congestion at the line of scrimmage.
Talk a little bit about the importance of the responsibility of the defensive end, because you talked about them pinching. I mean, their primary job is basically just to sit and pinch on that end and make the quarterback pitch, correct?
Yeah, I think that you were talking about the hardest thing to do in a triple option defense is everyone wants to be the hero. You want to be the guy to make the tackler, to blow up the play, but it just simply can't happen. Like, you can't peek into other aspects of the game. You have to worry about your sole responsibility. So what I mean by that is when this fullback goes on the fullback dive, the defensive end should not be concerned one bit about that fullback dive. Like, he should not bite down on that fullback dive. What he needs to do is get outside the furthest outside man on the line of scrimmage, sit on the line of scrimmage, and then squeeze down. And then if the quarterback keeps it, you're right there to make the tackle. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, you want to force him to pitch it to the pitch man, who is obviously going to be the running back, right? And so you're handing off kind of the responsibility to the next person. Fullback dive doesn't happen, okay. Then now that the responsibility becomes the defensive end to tackle the quarterback. Okay, the quarterback pitches it. Now your outside linebacker and your safety comes down and fills the alley, and they make the tackle. You're just passing it along. The defensive end should never feel like they have to make the tackle on fullback dive or tackle the pitch man. They should only have to worry, like they should hit the quarterback every single play. Because if the quarterback's going to have the ball and he's going to act like he's going to run it, then you have every right as a defender to hit him. So you want to hit Blake Horvath every single play that he doesn't hand the ball off to the fullback, right? Like that's solely their job. So it becomes really important because you don't want to, wipe down the line of scrimmage, and now the quarterback has a free lane to run off the defensive ends, but you have to sit, squeeze, make the tackle, or make him pitch it, and that's your job as a defensive end.
Tommy is asking, and if the quarterback keeps and follows the fullback, so you've got
still
a
the inside linebacker,
basically.
Yeah, it's still the inside linebacker's job and the defensive tackles to make that. I mean, you've got 4 guys right here to make a tackle on, 1, possibly 2 players. If it becomes like a power situation, these linebackers can combo that and figure out how to tackle the quarterback. Anything between the guards anything between the tackles is the responsibility of the defensive tackles and the inside linebackers.
Tell me about that outside veer. I don't know if you can explain a veer block real quick and just kind of how that concept works and whose responsibility that is.
Yeah, so the veer block is going to be, the veer run scheme is kind of like not necessarily a zone, but you're running right off the tackle basically, right? And so if you get kind of a fullback dive situation there, that's still on your inside linebackers to be able to, you have to read where that dive is going. And that's not considered the pitch man still at that point. So these were, I remember there were a couple plays where like, I thought, you can do kind of like that fake fullback dive, and then the quarterback kind of runs a veer off the tackle. I remember many instances when I was playing against a triple option, they would fake that dive, and then I would realize the fullback wouldn't have the ball, and I'd just throw him to the side and kind of start shuffling down the line, and there's the quarterback kind of falling into your lap, right? And so, again, the inside linebacker has the responsibility of really any run play between the tackles. Once you get outside the tackles, that's when you have the defensive end on the quarterback, and you've got obviously the outside linebackers and the safety on the pitch man.
All right. Excellent. Swandong wants to know who would have been a better Navy quarterback, Riley Leonard or Haynes King? I mean, they're both good, really good runners.
I think Riley Leonard, because I think he's a bit tougher.
You think so?
And a bit more athletic.
More durable, that's for sure. Take a lot of hits, though, man. Like Horvath is a little bit thicker than Riley Leonard. Not quite as tall as Riley Leonard either, but he is definitely thicker and built to take those hits. All right. Anything else before we wrap up and get ready for some rapid fire?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to do one last thing here. We were talking about this, and I'll be quick with this, but we were talking about, when I think Notre Dame could get into trouble. It's when Navy comes into this like shotgun look, and you kind of, you spread it out. So you've got 2 wide receivers. You've got a quarterback and a running back in shotgun, and then you've got some sort of wing player back there as well. So like as a defense, first time you've practiced all week, quarterback's under center, you got your wing backs, your full backs, you're gearing up to stop the run, and then all of a sudden when you go to shotgun, like your natural instinct is just to think, okay, they're going to pass the ball, right? Like that's where it's at. But I mean, I've said this kind of before too. Like you can still run the triple option out of shotgun, and basically an RPO is a triple option to some degree. But I think where you get in trouble is when they run this triple option out of shotgun, because you've spread things out, and now you can still accomplish the running back or fullback dive, and then this wing player can oftentimes will come into motion, right? And so you got fullback dive, and now with this guy coming in motion behind the quarterback, you can still get into a full triple option look where if the quarterback keeps it, now both of these guys are kind of rolling to the outside here, and you're still, you have to still keep your quarterback to pitch man phase and responsibilities.
Yeah.
But when they do this, everything is much more spread out. The box isn't condensed. And so it gives them more space to kind of work with. But, like we've talked about too, that should play into Notre Dame's favor because of the athletes we have. And that's overall why I'm not worried about them passing the ball, is because Notre Dame has plenty of good secondary players to match up. And if I were Christian Gray and my shoulder wasn't feeling good, I don't know if I would want to make an appearance in the triple option game.
I don't disagree with that.
And I don't think there would be super it's not like you need Christian Gray in coverage versus Navy, you know, like
Right.
I think you can make do without him.
All right, good stuff. A little triple option 101 from Jesse. We will take a timeout. Hour 2 coming up. It's rapid fire. We've got plenty of college football playoff talk coming up around the corner. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It is hour 2 of Budweiser's weekday sports beat with irishbreakdown.com, and that means it's rapid fire time. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers is still in the house after his fabulous triple option breakdown, and Bobby Hensley is with us once again. How are you tonight, Bobby?
I'm doing great. I really enjoyed the whiteboard there. Do you think
I like how I went out of my way not to say whiteboard, and then the first thing Bobby does is say whiteboard as we start off the second hour.
I'm just curious, Jesse, what do you think if a team has like a more depth of resources at recruiting, could they make that offense more successful than Navy does the best they can with what they have? But do you think that that offense would actually work if a team was dedicated enough to just keep running it?
I do. Like, I think if you had like a Riley Leonard led offense with like Alabama, offensive line, peak Derrick Henry, I don't know how you could stop them, because the whole goal of the triple option is to literally get 3 yards of play, because if it's 4th and 1, you're going to go for it every time. So if you had the athletes and you ran it to perfection, I think it's an unstoppable offense.
It's interesting because Paul Johnson obviously tried to make it work at Georgia Tech, and they had some success for a while having better athletes than what he had when he was at Navy. But obviously you go back to Lou Holtz, and that's exactly what he was doing with better athletes, with the Ismails and Waters and Johnsons and the Brooks of the world and Tony Rice in there. They were running triple option, and they had high level athletes, and they won a national championship doing it. And they were still successful after the championship year doing that with different elements of the option.
But, I mean, they were close, but the fact that
the problem is you can't get those kind of guys now, because you can't sell guys who want to get to the NFL on running the triple option at the FBS level.
But like Notre Dame had Jerome Bettis and Reggie Brooks, which is the perfect combination for all of this, and they didn't quite make it all the way to the end for the championship. Obviously, a different system, different time. It's just, I don't know. You look at like stuff like Mike Bray used to do. He used to look at his roster and kind of shift his strategies. And I just feel like if you really dedicated yourself,
there was some Moneyball stuff in there for sure.
There you go, Moneyball. That's the triple option.
Help you out whenever I can.
Well, very little. Huh? Anyway, good to see you guys.
You too, Ricky Bobby Hensley. It's good to see you.
Yeah. I always forget that we're on the screen so people can see me.
Just a reminder, you can watch this show on either YouTube channel, the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel, or the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. So after that side note, let's get into the stuff that we came here to talk about tonight. It's always good for Ricky Bobby to sidetrack us.
Shake and bake.
We get going. That's right. Shake and
bake.
So along with Notre Dame's number 10 ranking in the first college football playoff rankings this week, it's brought some backlash from the national media types who think the Irish are overhyped and overranked. Here's a headline from the USA Today hit piece by Matt Hayes. It reads, Notre Dame and CFP's unholy and unreasonable partnership, hard to ignore. That is the USA Today headline today. Hayes is not the only national guy who thinks that Notre Dame's ranking is undeserved, but he says the ranking is, quote, deference to the largest television property in the sport and nothing else, end quote, adding that Notre Dame's blue blood status is more important to the committee than earned results on the field. So, Jess, I'll start with you. What do you guys think of this?
Yeah, my favorite thing to do is to overreact about the first college football playoff poll when there's still 4 weeks left in the season, right? Like, I get it, like you have to start somewhere and someone is always going to be upset, but like let's be matter of fact about this. There's going to be at least 1 2-loss team to get into the college football playoff. And I believe on paper right now, Notre Dame is the best 2-loss team in the country. If you watch them, they have a prolific offense. They have the best running back in the country. And if you listen to the selection committee say, early on in the season, they would not have had Notre Dame in their rankings because of the doubts that they had with their defense. But since the defense has turned it on and cleaned up their game, they feel like with Notre Dame's offense, they are the most complete 2-loss team in the country. And so, there's a lot of people are saying, well, Oklahoma and Texas have 2 losses and they have better wins and, yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, but Notre Dame has a loss to who would be the SEC champ, who Texas and Oklahoma play, in the same conference as.
Right. Ranked number
and
3.
You also
by 1 point
have a loss to Miami, which is starting to, dwindle by the day, how good that actually looks. But I think the biggest thing that people are caught up on is Notre Dame doesn't have that quote unquote signature win like maybe Texas or Oklahoma does, but Notre Dame doesn't have quite as bad of losses as Oklahoma
not even
and
close.
Texas does.
Not even
and
close.
So like that's
right.
the weighing factor. And I think this and the thing is too is if you want to take in like all the metrics of like, the BCS, the Sarkisian, the power, like Notre Dame is ahead of them in mostly all of those categories. And then you put together the eyeball test, which I think is a huge, significant part of the committee. Like you have to, like, that's the whole reason why we have people and not just computers, because their job is to watch the games and just see. And they believe that Notre Dame's a better put together team in the moment than Oklahoma or Texas. But again, there's 4 weeks left in the season. And I guarantee more than 1 2-loss team makes the playoff before it's all said and done.
And look, I'll let you answer here in a minute, but I'll just add this thought to, to what Jesse is saying about there's 4 weeks left in the regular season. Plus you've got conference championship weekend and people talk about, well, should they be releasing, the college football playoff rankings? College football loves this. The college football playoff committee loves the fact that you get this kind. It's Jerry Jones marketing, whether it's good or bad. They like the fact that you're talking about it. And honestly, we need content. Doesn't everybody like the fact that we're talking about this stuff? Go ahead, Bobby.
No, I was going to say exactly what Jesse was kind of getting at. There's so much time left in this season. There's so many matchups that are ranked on rank left in this season. The dominoes are just falling. They're going to continue to fall. The fact that this is posted this early in the season is on purpose. You took my point.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm glad
we actually
I'm glad
think
we
alike
agree.
on this one.
Yeah. The only reason it's there is for people like us to keep having content, to something to talk about, because it really doesn't matter. None of the numbers matter. We had a question on this show a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. It was, do you think Notre Dame will reach the top 10 again this year?
And now here they are.
And look how fast they got up there. Now all they have to do is win out, and they look like a guaranteed bona fide playoff team. And you talk about signature win. Yeah, maybe they don't have it yet, but once you get to the playoff, if they make it and host a playoff game, that's where you get signature wins. They did it last year. They've proven that they get better throughout the year. They've already had this blueprint. The fact that they played 2 tough teams at the beginning of the year, one of them on the road, one at home, I think that's incredible. That's great. That's what they're tied to, and it's wonderful that A&M's doing so well, and the Miami stuff starting to fizzle, but that's what this is all about. It's just too early to talk about why they're ranked over who, because here's my thing. If somebody's going to say Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be in the top 10, okay, who does over them then? Why does another team deserve it? Because I don't see a reason that you can put other teams above Notre Dame in the top 10.
Well, I mean, most people, the biggest outrage is the fact that Notre Dame has 2 losses, Miami has 2 losses, and therefore Miami should be ahead of Notre Dame.
That Miami has been trending down and Notre Dame has been trending up.
Exactly.
And that's where the eyeball test.
Because if you look at other data, it was at the beginning of the season, and everyone has known since the dawn of time and the start of college football, it is much better to lose at the very beginning of the season than it is in the middle or at the end of the season. Because here's a shock for everyone, who wants to look at all this in just pure black and white, which is most of this national media stuff. You become a different team as the season progresses. And that's exactly what Notre Dame has become. And, because like the other part of this, there's some irony, of course, in all of this, because most Notre Dame fans typically live under this umbrella of thinking that there's all this external bias working against Notre Dame. And honestly, I was preparing for that kind of argument potentially going into Tuesday night when they announced the rankings. But, it's been like the Andy Staples, Ari Wassermans, and now the Matt Hayeses of the world, who, as Michael Hahn says, Matt Hayes has been bashing Notre Dame forever. Like this is nothing new, but they've been the most vocal bashing the committee and bashing the rankings, the whole it's not fair. I'm sorry, nothing's really fair. It's what's feasible. But Hayes wants everyone to believe, if you read this, and I did, I clicked it, I read it, I wanted to see, what his whole argument was. He wants people to believe that Mark D'Antonio, the same Mark D'Antonio who coached against Notre Dame when he was at Michigan State in the peak of Notre Dame, Michigan State, back and forth and hatred and everything else, who is now part of the College Football Playoff Committee, that Mark D'Antonio is somehow part of a great conspiracy to make sure that Notre Dame's name brand carries the Irish into the playoffs. And Mack Rhodes, who's the selection committee chair, who's also the sitting athletic director at Baylor University, a school that is obviously in the Big 12 and has its own, like stake in this whole thing in terms of multiple bids and everything else. Mack Rhodes is the man behind the curtain pulling the strings for the Irish. Like everyone else, everyone's got their own agendas as well, but they're all part of this committee, and everyone's up in arms again about the head-to-head with Miami. But, like both of Miami's losses are worse than Notre Dame's losses, and Texas A&M is the number 3 team in the country, so like Hayes is also talking out of both sides of his mouth because, again, if you read what he's saying, he criticizes Notre Dame for the ACC scheduling agreement, saying basically they're just a bunch of cream puffs. Well, what conference is Miami in? The last time I checked, Miami is in the ACC. So, like, you're criticizing on the one hand,
and
like
lost to one of those cream puffs.
Yeah, and lost to one of those cream puffs. And in the meantime, Notre Dame beat the snot out of NC State, and NC State has wins against two of the, the two best teams in the ACC this year, which right now are Virginia and Georgia Tech. But there's also the fact that Notre Dame has the number 14 scoring offense in the country and the number 24 scoring defense in the country. And of course, the defensive aspect is very important because, as you said, Jesse, the improvement over the course of the year and how Notre Dame is a much different team now, especially defensively, than they were at the beginning of the season when they played that game against Miami, especially when you consider that they have played 2 of the top 11 scoring offenses in the nation. They totally stymied Arkansas, who is also ranked number 24 in scoring offense. So, I mean, Notre Dame obviously has a lot of things going in their favor, and there's a lot of other data to consider other than just one game that was at the start of the season that's what, 10 weeks ago at this point.
Well, it's like Jesse said too, the eyeball test is what's important, right? And that's what we were talking about. That's what everybody's going to talk about for Notre Dame the rest of the year. They're playing these people, they have to win. Do you think on the eyeball test, if they played Miami again, that they could be able to beat them? Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what
now.
leads to me to my final point is if you want to, counter these what I'll call idiots, ask them if they played in a neutral field and we hit up FanDuel Sportsbook, who the betting favorite would be.
Right. Like Jesse, you talked about, like that comment that Marcus Freeman made about how when they came out, when they went to halftime at Miami, they said, look, we've got to open this thing up. We've got to let CJ Carr cook a little bit, and things look different in the second half. They were guarding certain things, guarding against certain unknowns. Chris Ash obviously was running a completely different defense at that point. I think that if you played that game again right now, neutral field, Notre Dame would probably be at least a 3.5 point favorite going in, at least a 3.5 point favorite. And I think that Notre Dame would win that game because of look at what Carson Beck has turned into and what CJ Carr has turned into, as again, 2+ months down the road.
Yeah. I mean, they lost that game by a field goal and they're better on offense and defense.
Right.
Yeah, so it's at least 3 points different. Yeah.
Man, we are flying right along. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've got more Notre Dame football talk and rapid fire. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It's rapid fire, tons of topics to get to, or at least a few, depending on how many we get through here with a three-man booth here tonight. Sean Stiers, Jesse Stiers, Bobby Hensley. There was a question in the mailbag that we didn't get to last week that I think applies to this conversation that we're having about Notre Dame right now. Yeah, they're ranked number 10 in the college football playoff ranking right now. The question from Lou Holt's grandson from the Irish Breakdown Champions Lounge: is Notre Dame truly elite this year or just very good? He said, basically, can they beat Ohio State or is it unlikely? I'm just as big a Notre Dame fan as anyone, but the reality is they have 2 losses, and that has to mean something because Ohio State would likely not have lost to either Miami or Texas A&M. So what do you guys think about that? Is Notre Dame truly elite or very good?
I want to say they're elite offensively because I don't think that there is a team in the country that has a better running back situation and also a better passing attack in the country. Like the combination of they can put you in a bind of, do you want to commit another player to the box? Well, that means we have the resources to pass over your head. Do you want to put another player in coverage? Well, that just means we'll let our, Heisman level / 2 NFL running backs run all over you, right? And so offensively, I think they're there. And the thing is, and I think the reason why I led with that is I don't think that, like, Ohio State's offense isn't as good as it was last year. Like, I don't think there's as many elite offenses that Notre Dame's defense would have to worry about this year, right? Like, Notre Dame's defense obviously isn't elite yet, and it's not as good as it was last year. But I also think the overall makeup of college offenses, like, they're not overly great this year. And I think Notre Dame could compete with you in a shootout if it came down to it. And I think they have one of the very few offenses who could take it to a team like Ohio State.
No, I think you're absolutely right that if they can compete with Ohio State, and I don't even know that Ohio State should be the litmus test. I don't know that they're the best team in the country. They're undefeated, sure, and ranked number 1, but I don't think that necessarily means they're the litmus test. They might lose a game in the Big Ten championship game and then fall down in the rankings, and Notre Dame might end up ahead of them. Who knows? But yeah, they could compete with them. I think their dynamic offense keeps them in every single game. It's amazing because when you started the season, you were thinking, oh, the defense, we don't got to worry about that. Let's see what this rookie quarterback will do and how the offense performs. And they've done exceptional. And it's the defense that needed to grow up a little bit, and they have. They kept getting better. So I don't know that if they can beat Ohio State. Sure, I think they can. I don't think that it really matters, though. I think Texas A&M might be tougher than Ohio State, and they were in that game. And if they, like we were just talking last,
I think there's a case for Texas A&M to be number 1 right now. I think there's a case for Indiana to be number 1. I think that Ohio State is getting, like, they have a nice win over Texas.
They're defending champs.
How
That's
good
why
is
they're
Texas?
number 1.
Yeah, they haven't lost since Thanksgiving last year, like Thanksgiving weekend when they lost to Michigan. Interesting comment that I am Tenzin, I am the son of Ang made in the YouTube chat. Ohio State had 2 losses last year. Do you know how much those 2 losses were by? A combined total of 4 points, which is the same number of Notre Dame's 2 losses this year. So, yeah, Ohio State ended up winning the national championship last year, but they had 2 losses in the regular season, including one that they had no business losing to in Michigan. And everyone thought that was going to derail them, very similar to how people thought that Notre Dame losing to NIU would derail them. And, like we were talking about backlash, obviously, there were plenty of people who didn't think Notre Dame deserved to be in the playoff or have their ranking last year because of the fact that they lost to NIU. But, I don't think that they're elite right now, but they're trending in the right direction. Like Jesse said, I think that they've got an elite offense and they do have a better offense, or at least a much more diverse offense as he outlined there than, compared to last year. But the defense is also getting back to where it needs to be. And that's the fact that they've allowed only a little over 12 points a game over the last 5 games. And the 5 teams that they've beaten in this stretch combined to average over 26 points per game. So they're holding those teams, to less than half of what they typically average. Arkansas scored less than 24 points once this season, and that was the 13 that they scored against Notre Dame. And they've scored more than 30 points more times than, than they've even, scored 24 points. So, look at last year. There was a point in the season where you said, or was there a point in the season where you said Notre Dame is truly elite? Because their signature win last year was Texas A&M, and then they turned around and lost to NIU the next week. They played a comparable schedule last year, maybe even slightly worse because of the fact that you played 2 service academies and 2 MAC teams. But Georgia's number 5 right now. There are plenty of questions with them, like to all the backlash and hate that Notre Dame is getting for even being number 10. I mean, there are arguments and like head-to-head comparisons where like, is Notre Dame better than Oregon? Is Notre Dame actually better than Georgia? Just because they happen to have 1 loss, so they're obviously going to be ahead of them right now. But I think the margin is a lot thinner, but I think that Notre Dame is very good right now and trending toward the chance to be elite by the time it's all said and done, just like last year.
Well, the term elite in itself, I get why we're talking about it, and it gives us content. We kind of talked about that earlier. How many elite teams are there in college football?
Right, and that's what I was getting at, Bobby. Like, I don't think that there is one complete elite team this year. I think Ohio State has probably the most elite defense, but their offense isn't nearly what it was last year, in my opinion, right? And so that's the hard part, is I think Notre Dame has components of eliteness right now, but they're not a fully complete elite team yet.
I agree.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there. Like even the Ohio State's win over Texas. Texas didn't look elite at the time. Maybe they've gotten better throughout the year, like Notre Dame has. But Notre Dame might have a better resume right now than Texas, hopefully, to get in, because their losses aren't as bad unless Miami keeps losing and makes them look bad. But yeah, I just don't think there's a single elite team that's like, okay, well, they deserve to be the number 1 seed. We know going into the playoffs that's just where they're going to be.
Joe says elite is not Notre Dame. They need a kicker. Oh, we'll see if they've found him when Eric Schmidt takes over the duties this weekend. I mean, that's, again, like with the 4 games that they've got left in the regular season, kicker shouldn't be an issue. We'll find out just how good Pittsburgh is next week. Jesse's going to that game in Pittsburgh, but you're going to that kicker is going to be a factor once you get into the playoff. And that's obviously something that they've got to get figured out. And we'll see if they can start to get it figured out this weekend. Scale of 1 to 10 though. How confident are you Notre Dame ends up hosting a playoff game again this year?
The fan in me wants to say like 9 out of 10, but I think a more realistic is like a 6 or 7 out of 10. But the first thing I texted you and Vince after this, when the first committee ranking came out, is Notre Dame is in a great spot because they're in 10th place, and if they win their last 4, you can't move them out of the college football playoff, in my opinion. If you win these last 4, really what you're jockeying for is to play a home game and slip into that 8 seed. So I'm going to give this a solid 6 or 7 out of 10. And to me, it's either Notre Dame misses the playoffs or they host a playoff game. There's really no in between, in my opinion. But, I think you obviously need to root for, BYU to give Texas Tech their second loss. You want Iowa to beat Oregon this weekend. Like, there's still a few things that need to happen in front of them, but it's not like it's like this crazy, you need 10 things to happen and there's like a less than 1% chance. Like, there's 4 games left. There's conference championships games left, and Notre Dame started at 10. And so you can, to move up 2 spots is really not that hard of an ask. So I'm going to land on a 7 out of 10 out of this. And I will say I will be in attendance if they do host again.
So you're saying that they only have you would only be a 7 out of 10 confident that they make the playoffs even?
I mean, to me, it's the same. It's almost the same question.
Right.
Because if you lose, you're done. And I think if you win the rest of your games, you're hosting the playoffs.
Rise into that, because you've only got to move up 2 spots at this point to be the number 8 seed to host.
And you have Texas Tech and BYU in front of you in one of those
each other, and some of these other teams are going to start playing each other. There's going to be some things that are going to happen in front of them, just like with last year.
Right.
And by the way, They started off at number 10 in the initial poll last year and got all the way up to number 5. Now they ended up, of course, being the 7 seed because of the old way that they were doing the seeding, but they rose 5 spots. So that's I'm just going to go ahead and give my answer and say my confidence is an 8 that if they win out, they'll move up at least 2 spots, if not more, which is going to put them into hosting. So I'm very confident that they're going to end up hosting as long as they win out, kind of going off what you said, Jess. It's an either or situation. Either you're winning out and you're going to end up hosting because of these other teams playing each other and they're going to knock each other out, or you're going to suffer a loss and you're not going to be in the playoff at all.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. The 8, I don't see a way that they don't win out, and I think that they'll obviously be hosting. You just got to look behind them almost to see if there's any teams that can possibly jump them with what their schedules are left. But I think Notre Dame is in control of their own destiny, which is a nice place to be, obviously. But they just keep winning. They keep looking good. They're going to host a playoff game.
Which is odd because Brock Osweiler kept telling us last week during the Boston College game that Notre Dame does not control its own destiny because of the fact that they're not in a conference, like that old cliche time after time.
Can we post a poll in the Champions Lounge? When did you hit mute on that game last week? Because I hit mute at like the beginning of the third quarter.
I wish I would have, but it's hard for me to, as much as I try not to focus on the stuff that they're saying, it became very difficult, but I also don't like just complete silence when I'm watching.
Oh, I put on Apple Calm Radio because Osweiler was making me so mad.
No, I think it was third quarter of Brock that I was like, I just can't listen to him. I can't take him seriously. He just doesn't make sense. And I don't know where he got that gig from to begin with.
Well, it's one thing to kind of double down, triple down on this whole narrative that he was creating, but like they're just the most boring people too. It was just like listening to monotone hot takes. It's like, at least if you're Stephen A, you're up there yelling and screaming about stuff. But like with Brock Osweiler, it's like you are like just the most monotone man in the world. I don't want to listen to anything you have to say.
Robin in the YouTube chat says, never listen to the TV announcers. Listen to Notre Dame announcers. Good call. My problem is it's very distracting if you don't have it synced up, and I didn't have the patience to try to get it synced up. I know Vince knows kind of the secret to doing that when he watches some basketball sometimes, but I don't have that same patience to get it synced up. But that's what back before, the proliferation of internet and streaming and all that different stuff. When I was in college, that we did that all the time. We would turn down the sound on the TV, and whether it was the Kansas Jayhawks or, all of my buddies were big Chiefs fans and stuff like that, we would turn the TV sound down, and we would mute the TV, and we would have the radio broadcasts all the time. It was awesome. Just like it's more intense feel. It's a lot more fun listening to the radio guys.
I think you get more ambient noise too, which sounds pretty cool. You feel like you're there more than you do watching a television.
For sure.
Television.
It's like having it in surround sound when you're doing it that way. Speaking of the radio broadcast, of course, Notre Dame Navy this Saturday night, 7:30 kickoff at Notre Dame Stadium. Tony Simeone and Ryan Harris have the call here on Sports Radio WSBT. The game day show comes your way at 3 o'clock, 3 to 6:30. They're live at the linebacker this week. Michael Floyd and Darryl Flash Gordon will be at the linebacker with Tim, Eric, and Tyler in person, and they'll also have an interview with former Notre Dame kicker, last year's Notre Dame kicker, Mitch Jeter, to talk about some of this year's kicking issues and struggles. So that's the game day show, 3 to 6:30 this Saturday, and Notre Dame Navy kicks off at 7:30. We're back to wrap up Rapid Fire right after this. Winding down this hour and the show, for that matter. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with irishbreakdown.com. Don't forget, 7 o'clock on the College Football Nation YouTube channel, Jesse Stiers and Trevor Trowbridge bring you the spread option. They're looking at a few different sports wagers for this weekend. Is it all college football related, Jess?
All college football related.
All right. Excellent. Spread option. Jesse and Trevor. You guys haven't done much together. I'm going to be interested to see what this how this whole thing goes down tonight.
Tune in if you get bored. I
will. May or may not live, but I'll definitely listen, even if I don't watch it live tonight. I will tell you that much.
It'll be more entertaining than this Broncos and Raiders game tonight.
That I agree with.
Oof.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not saying much.
I know. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame and Auburn announcing a football home and a home for 2027 and 28 is blank.
Hopefully it is silencing the haters, because you start to look at Notre Dame's schedule forecast for the next 5 to 10 years. You got some big names on there. You got Auburn, you got Texas, you got Alabama, you've got Clemson, obviously, Arkansas. I think there's
the 28
schedule. Yeah, the 28 schedule is ridiculous.
Here's the 28 schedule. That's for anyone who's been pining for some old school, no one can complain about this schedule. Texas, September 9th, then Arkansas, then Purdue. Yeah, Purdue. But Auburn, Virginia Tech, Clemson, Navy, Boston College, Miami, at Pittsburgh. That's a schedule right there. And that's not even a full schedule.
Yeah, and it's it's just so funny to me, because Notre Dame puts the names on their schedule, but they can't control what those teams are going to be. You can't control what Arkansas was going to be this year.
People will complain. So
right,
yeah.
But I think Notre Dame is doing their job. They're doing their due diligence. They're holding up their end of the bargain, and they're putting these big names on the schedule. They're not afraid to do so.
I think you're absolutely right. You got to keep doing that. If you want to be an independent, you got to go out and get these matchups. You have to put these big names on your schedule. And we don't know how good Auburn will be in 2028, but we do know that schedule looks really loaded. And even a team like Purdue, they might every now and again they get these sneaky good years, and if they keep being on the schedule, they're at some point they're going to be one of the top teams too. And then you have Clemson, and then you have Arkansas. You remember, it wasn't that long ago in my lifetime that anytime Notre Dame played the SEC, it was almost scary. They're going to lose. Now it's so exciting to see them play these SEC schools, because you know that they're going to put up a good fight, and they're probably going to be winning most of those games, hopefully. So I think that it's awesome, and it's what they have to do to keep these, to stay independent. I think they're committing to it, and then it's awesome that these schools are continuing to schedule Notre Dame is a big point for them too, because it means something for Auburn too, I'm sure.
Clontarf is asking if more of these shows that I promote can be on YouTube. I mean, I can't control it. We do work at a radio station now, so I can't control what's YouTube and what's not. But we do it in affiliation with Irish Breakdown and the college football
playoff.
No, the College Football Nation show is in conjunction with Irish Breakdown. But yeah, I mean, look. Pete Bavacqua was talking a couple of weeks ago when Dan Patrick was in town about the list of teams that still want to play Notre Dame, and I think that this is a prime example. When you look at all these SEC schools in the future that are going to be on Notre Dame's schedules, and the fact that, as we kind of keep repeating, look, people want to play Notre Dame, and
the money helps. And the ratings.
And the fact that the SEC has required its schools to play a 10th game beyond just the 9 conference game, against an FBS opponent, beyond just the 9 conference games that they play. I think that is a pretty nice factor as well, and it works in Notre Dame's favor. Real quickly, Green Bay Packers wore those 1923 throwback helmets last weekend. They were supposed to replicate the leather helmets from that era. What did you guys think of that look? Got about a minute and a half to go here.
I think they're ugly. I think they're banned. I think they should never be worn again. And I think you should double not wearing them after seeing the Packers lose at home to that Panthers team.
Yeah, I agree. I think the idea sounds great in theory. Like, oh, they're going to have a throwback leather helmet, but it just didn't work. And it looked really gross with the jerseys. I don't know if it'd be okay with their normal jerseys, but if you're going to lose to Carolina, it doesn't really matter, like Jesse just said.
Didn't they just look like it was obvious that they just took a laminate and put it over the helmet? Like, it just looked like bad. It looked like something, like I grew up in the 80s. It looked like something that you would see in the 80s, you know, with just this bad laminate. Like, the idea was in the right place, but it's like, look, that was over 100 years ago. We know it's not an actual leather helmet. Like, the ones that Notre Dame used, I think it was against Navy a few years back, wasn't it? When they did those Rockney throwbacks, like, they still weren't perfect because, again, it's a modern helmet, but they looked at least a little bit closer to what they were trying to accomplish. It just looked like a horrible laminate replica when it came down to it.
Yeah, it was the Wish version of helmets. It wasn't wasn't even Walmart quality.
Yeah, exactly. It was like old, my mom used to sell this stuff called home interiors in the 80s, and that's what it reminded me of, was like bad looking fake, you know, candelabras. And
I don't know, it might be better that they lost, because imagine if they had won like by a lot and had all these highlight plays that they had to have all these highlights of those stupid uniforms on.
I think Bobby, Tommy has a crush on you when it comes down to it. He's been just throwing all kinds of shots at you.
It's fine. Tonight. I like it.
All right. Well, I just realized we are behind, so we've got to wrap this sucker up. Jesse's got that spread option coming up at 7 on the CFB Nation YouTube channel. Bobby, enjoyed it as always, no matter what Tommy says. Jesse, enjoyed it. I will talk to you tomorrow. Brian will be in here with some recruiting news as well. That's coming up on tomorrow's show. And we will talk to you then. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.